Liebe Zuschauerinnen, liebe Zuschauer,
Listeners, greetings in God and welcome to today's program in the series, The True School is Life. This time the topic is, we learn to focus. What does focusing mean? In general, it means directing one's perception to a certain point, bringing thought energies together onto a certain goal, ultimately concentration. Whether we are operating machines and devices or driving a car, whether we are sitting at a desk or having conversations with friends and conversation partners in which the focus is on constructive solutions, whether we are doing housework or preparing a meal, concentration makes many things easier and more effective, be it in the areas of our occupational or private everyday life. In Gabriele's text, from which we may read today, focusing is to be understood as an aid on the path that leads to spiritual evolution. Nearer, my God, to Thee. It is the path that Jesus of Nazareth taught, and that the resurrected One, the Christ of God, teaches again today. For nearly 50 years, He, the free Spirit, has been speaking to us again, worldwide, to all people, to all tribes, to all peoples and nations. He does this through Gabriele, the prophetess and emissary of God in our time. On the topic, we learn to focus, we may read to you, dear viewers, dear listeners, from a teaching hour of the divine wisdom. Gabriele explained. Humankind has turned away from God, the life, the one more, the other less. For better understanding, here is a picture. When a continent turns away from the sun, it gets dark and cool, or even cold, early on that continent. It is similar with us people. Depending on how far a person has turned away from the inner light, the life, by thinking and acting against life, he accordingly lacks light and warmth. This means that he then has no longer any respect for the life that is in him, that is also in the minerals, nature kingdoms, and in all material heavenly bodies, and in everything that we human beings see and do not see. God is the life. The life is good. It makes the fibers of the mantle, the human being, light-filled and powerful, happy and spiritually intuitive. It makes him communicative for life. If the person refines himself by giving a chance to life and thus to his true nature by monitoring and controlling himself and clearing up everything that separates him from life. We human beings are on earth solely in order to turn back to God, the inner light. Perhaps this is a sentence for us to reflect on, thus Gabriele. We human beings are on earth solely in order to turn back to God, the inner light. Here again, the comparison with the sun and a continent helps us. When a continent turns toward the sun, it becomes lighter, brighter. The days grow longer, it gets warmer. Everything begins to turn green and blossom. Life bursts forth. It flourishes and shows itself in the most beautiful and luxuriant forms. Then it can be said, the Spirit permeates matter.
Gabriele erklärte weiter.
Gabriele explained further. If we've listened attentively to the brief explanations about ourselves, we have become aware that there are two currents into which the human being can connect by sending and receiving. On the one hand, into the good, which is the life, which is for the human being and brings him good. and on the other hand, into the negative. I would also like to call it the bad, which is against life and which is directed against the person, against the mantle human being. Let us once again become aware that there are the for and against, and thus there is the negative focusing and the lawful focusing. To focus is to intensely send in order to receive correspondingly. Negative focusing starts from the so-called law of isolation, which first activates images in one's own repository in the brain, which the brain, and thus the person, then projects outward, that is, sends. Via this his world of imagination, his pictures, which come from the ego, from the law of isolation, he receives like and similar things. By way of the negative principle of intense sending, that is, focusing, a person can also tap into the atmospheric chronicle. With this, in the atmospheric chronicle, he sets in motion what is useful to him for his purposes, which he may want to build up and expand. Think of science and economy, state and church. What people have thought or done in the past in a negative way flows to him. What he receives in response to his sending corresponds to his all-too-human sending potential. It is often unethical, immoral, brutal, spiteful. It is totally related to the law of isolation. Such human behaviors are not permeated by the Spirit.
Gabriele continued. In our present time, we experience this negative, intense sending or focusing in manifold ways. Generally speaking, these are astral influences. Through this influence, objects can also be moved, and people who are receptive for this can be controlled, because they have similar things in themselves. We can see which energy spheres we can get in touch with under certain circumstances if we do not handle our energies responsibly, if the direction of our inner goal and view, our orientation and attitude are not God and the divine. Before we get into the actual topic of learning to focus in more detail, it was necessary to explain these two possibilities, negative focusing and lawful focusing. We do not want to get into the communication level of negative focusing. Here we learn to focus as a help on the path that leads to spiritual evolution, nearer, my God, to you, so that God can work through us more and more. And with this, His will is done and His kingdom comes, the kingdom of peace. The prerequisite for positive focusing on the spiritual divine level is that the following statement is essentially our heart's aspiration: to develop divine energies, to turn toward the life that is God by purifying our soul and our person, the mantle, from what is against life. Everyone can ask himself, perhaps in a quiet hour of self-reflection, whether he wants this from the heart, whether he wants to illuminate his shell, so that God can permeate matter and the person attain communication with the All-Being.
Gabriele führte weiter aus.
Gabriele explained further.
Leben ist Licht.
Life is light. It is power, all communication. If our soul becomes more filled with light, then also the person becomes purer and his mantle of isolation finer. This means that the light begins very gradually to permeate him. That is, the spirit begins to permeate the material. We receive increased positive energy to the same extent that we turn to the life, to God in us. Through this, we can concentrate better. From this develops an increasing intuition for life. We gradually notice that life is not only in us, but also around us. Life is communication. All being communicates with one another. It is the language of the degree of consciousness. One state of consciousness understands the other, because all pure forms are in one law, in the divine law, the life. We human beings are in the middle of an incomprehensible sea of communicative processes of positive and negative energies. Our brain can be compared with a radar screen. With our feeling, sensing, thinking, and speaking and acting, we adjust the radar screen to corresponding transmitting stations so as to receive energies from there. We receive them first in our brain and then in and on our body, which can be compared to a television screen. What we receive, we radiate pictorially. Thus, everyone will one day ask himself, toward what is the pointer on the scales tending? Toward which transmission sources is the radar screen, his brain, directed? To the positive or to the negative? The direction toward which our radar screen, the brain, turns is determined exclusively by each person himself.
Let us listen to what Gabriele explained further about this. She said, when we become aware that in everything we see, we do not want to speak of what we do not see, there is life, that is, highest communication, then we can also consciously enter into communication with the life, which is the good. The prerequisite, as stated, is that we approach the life within us, just as a continent inclines toward the sun. To focus means to bring together the spiritually developed positive energies into a ray of energy or a guiding ray, which we then direct at an object, at a situation, at our work and the like. Let us realize again and again anew that everything is energy, and that each volume of energy has its state of consciousness, that is, it radiates correspondingly and transmits information to us. Many people speak of coincidences and impulses. Since everything is energy, there are no coincidences. If our mantle, that is, our body, has become more light-filled because our soul has become purer, then the Spirit can send more rays of divine energies through us, so that we think and live more consciously. The brighter our soul and our body become, the more clearly the person can enter into communication with corresponding potentials of consciousness through the principle of sending and receiving, through focusing. An important prerequisite for learning to focus is to, first of all, free ourselves from concepts and opinions, from intentions and stipulations such as, this should go this way or that way, or this should meet my desires and my ideas, or I want to explore ideas that serve me personally.
Gabriele now explains to us what chance focusing offers. She said, if we have oriented our inner and outer life toward God, and if we daily strive to maintain this for the most part, then we will also strive to grasp our world of thoughts and feelings, our wanting. We practice self-recognition and clear out our all-too-human aspects more and more, in order to be able to understand our neighbor better, among other things, and step by step enter into the life, into the law of God, which is our true being. To intensify these processes, in order to recognize ourselves more quickly and more easily, and overcome what is not good, in order to grasp our causes and their often manifold roots, and remove them from the field of our soul, the collecting, the concentration of the forces of our consciousness is required. To this end, we learn to focus. Focusing thus offers us the chance to work on ourselves, on our inner path more effectively. All our burdens, which constitute our all-too-human potential for guilt and sin, are energetically recorded in us like on a film reel that runs through our conscious mind and subconscious. The film reel in our head consists of sequences of pictures. They say many things about us. What they say are our inputs. If we learn to focus positively in order to delete our inputs on the film reel, then we can lighten them, so that on our path through life, many things lighten up and we can forestall many a fate. If we clear up in the day whatever comes up, then we cleanse our future, so to speak. Gabriele repeats a sentence that says so much. If we clear up in the day what comes up, then we clear up our future, so to speak. Our soul can then go to more light-filled spheres after discarding the shell of its body.
Gabriele führt weiter aus.
Gabriele continued.
Fokussieren heißt nichts anderes.
Focusing means nothing more than complete and prolonged concentration, which we direct to problems, objects, work processes, and the like. We do this to break them down in order to grasp the message that lies in them. To be able to concentrate for a longer period of time, the first thing we need to do is to free ourselves from time pressure, anger, daily worries, personal wanting, stress, and attachment to our fellow people. Above all, what we need is inner peace. For example, by observing ourselves, in order to let go of all too human singularities through meditative exercises to become still, in order to achieve the harmonization of our brain activity. Therefore, we need inner and outer calmness in order to let corresponding pictures develop in our brain, which we then concentrate into energies and precisely direct at an object, at a situation. I repeat, thus Gabriele, focusing has to be learned. We have to again and again practice concentrating and directing our combined energies at what we want to break down. Focus is the hot spot. To focus means to bring energies together and direct them as through a magnifying glass at a situation or an object.
The teaching hour with Gabriele continued. The human being, especially during this time, is mostly turned to without. People's consciousness is not collected, but scattered. It draws or drifts, one time here, one time there. Those who are afraid of no longer being able to keep up with the hectic pace of human existence, who allow themselves to be tyrannized by the spirit of the times in order to receive the corresponding honor, or who allow others to determine them, are the architects of their misfortune. They are the hunted ones, who no longer know what is in front, behind, on the right and on the left, and who finally no longer know who they are. In order to deal properly with what moves us, to be able to economize with our energy and to use it consciously and sensibly, we would have to go through our earthly life with inner and outer discipline, that is, with a level-headed, upright, focused attitude. On the other hand, those who allow themselves to be drawn under the spell of anger, sorrow, fear, and the like cannot work purposefully and cannot take with them the consciousness that is in everything as a helper in their work, in the course of their lives.
Gabriele explained what we should watch out for. She said, as long as we let ourselves go, not paying attention to our feelings and sensations, thoughts and words, we become low on energy, tired and drained. Why? We cannot concentrate. We scatter energies instead of concentrating them. The first thing we need to do is train our brain to persevere in concentration. It is best to apply the first exercises to ourselves. Once we have learned to question and remedy, that is, to clear up what concerns us, what scatters us, or what pressures us personally, then we will succeed better and better at concentration. We must challenge ourselves, not only during these exercises, but day after day, hour after hour. Without the conscious concentration of our forces, that is, a mentally disciplined attitude, we will not progress and will fall back. If we demand accomplishment from ourselves, the brain cannot digress into idleness and the like. Accomplishment does not mean haste, but conscious activity. On the one hand, this makes our work more varied. We become more vital, more creative, more efficient, which brings us concentration and thus inner and also outer peace. In this way, we learn to be active in a balanced way.
Gabriele fasste zusammen.
Gabriele summarized. Thus, to focus means to break things down, to get help and impulse from the state of consciousness that we send to. This applies not only to the work on ourselves, but also in conversations. This applies to our field of activity, also in answering letters and the like. By concentrating, we will also do our work purposefully. This means that we will perform more and better. Conscious living is living in the Spirit of God. The more consciously, collectedly, and concentratedly we go through our days on earth, aligned with God, the Spirit of life, the broader will be the horizon of our consciousness, the radiation of our consciousness. Then the work with our hands will be more and more filled with divine energy, and our actions will be a contribution to building up that energy potential from which the kingdom of God on earth grows. Thus, our life on earth can be profitable for many, our neighbor, our second neighbor, the animals, and for the Mother Earth. Dear viewers, dear listeners, at the end of the schooling, we again span the bow to the beginning, to the words from Gabriele. She said, "We human beings are on earth solely in order to turn back to God, the inner light." In this spirit, we take our leave of you and wish you and all of us all the best, concentrated and energy-filled days with the corresponding gain and life. We will be glad when you tune in again for the next program in this series, The True School is Life. Goodbye and greetings in God.
తెలంగాణ అసెంబ్లీ సమావేశాలు కొనసాగుతున్నాయి. లైవ్ చూద్దాం.
అరకొరిగా ఎక్కడెక్కడో ఊరికి దూరంగాను నివాసయోగ్యం లేనటువంటి ప్రాంతాల్లో మరి స్థలం సేకరణ చేసి అక్కడ ఎన్నో అరకొరగా 15 ఇండ్లు 20 ఇండ్లు ఇచ్చినటువంటి పరిస్థితి. కానీ అసంపూర్తిగా ఉన్నటువంటి నా యొక్క గిరిజన ప్రాంతం సార్